Welcome back to Solo No More. I'm your host, Catryce Thompson, and I kind of wanted to talk about full time life as an entrepreneur, like when you're full time in your business. I recently had a couple of my client, blah. I recently had a couple of my clients decide that not even one of them decided, and the other didn't really have a choice in this matter. So, kind of both of them are in this situation where they're kind of exploring what is it like to be full time in business. I think it's like really interesting because there's so much hype for going full time with your business and like really being able to do the fucking thing, like have your business support your lifestyle and everything. But there's a lot of things that aren't talked about. And I remember when I first initially went full time in business, like there was some adjustments, some growing pains. And so one of my clients, she unfortunately got laid off from her 9 to 5 job. And then another one had kind of just reached this point where she was like, okay, I have this opportunity to go shoot a wedding in Hawaii. I'm not going to have any PTO like available to me. So I am just going to like ride out until I need to take this time off. And then I'm just not going to come back. So, again, like I said, one of them kind of had this choice and one didn't. But both are kind of in this situation where they're like, is full time for me? Or is full time for me in this season? And I think that's like a really big thing is that it's not just like once you go full time, you're stuck at full time with your business. Like you can always like sidestep and go a different direction and you can always change your mind and everything. I actually recently had a friend and I need to have a conversation with her about this because and maybe I'll have her as a guest on the podcast in a bit. I don't know. We'll see. But she recently took her six-figure like business and turned it into a side hustle and got her like first 9 to 5 ever. And I left corporate and I went full time in my business. I worked part time as a swim instructor up until August of 2024. And then like from there I've just kind of continued on being full time in my business, but even when I was working part time as a swim instructor, I was only working maybe like a max of 4 hours at a time. And I was working probably no more than 3 days a week. So it was super part time, super low lift. But kind of as I've been having these conversations with my clients about, full time and, is not just is it right for them, but what does that look like for them? And one of them had been out when we were having some conversations. She had already been laid off for a month. And she had posted in Circle, and we ended up having a conversation about this, about like time freedom and how when you don't have like the structure of a 9 to 5 after you've like done 9 to 5 life, like one, even prior to 9 to 5 life, we had school and the public education system is literally built around preparing us to go work 9 to 5s. And we were having this conversation about time freedom and feeling like she didn't accomplish as much as she wanted to in that first month, as she is still looking for a job, but she is wanting to take this time to really, this opportunity, this privilege to really focus on her business before going back to a 9 to 5. And we were talking about time freedom, and I was telling her about, my experience with going full time in my business. And as exciting as it was, I mean, first off, it was devastating. I got fired from my job and I was not expecting that. I had planned on quitting my 9 to 5. I think it was like 3 or 4 months later, like I had a date set, but we didn't reach that. And I ended up getting wrongfully terminated. And that is definitely a story for another day. But with that being said, as devastating as it was also really exciting. But then I found myself sitting at home being like, there are 24 hours in the day. I need to sleep for at least 8 hours, and I don't know what else to do with myself. Like, how do I remember just struggling, and there was so much going on, and I would be so curious to be able to go back in time and experience, not go back in time, but like if I could experience going full time in my business for the first time, being in a healthy, stable relationship where life is like pretty stable and not very overwhelming or chaotic. It would be I would probably look very different because I was struggling with a broken heart and depression, and like my anxiety was really bad during this time. But I just didn't feel productive because I didn't feel like I was getting a lot done. On paper, yes, it kind of looked like I was, or at least online, not on paper, but online, it looked like I was keeping busy and I was doing things. But like at the same time, I had so much space on my calendar that I had no clue what to fill it with. And I think that sometimes when, we talk about going full time in our businesses, we don't think about, like what is actually going to fill that time that a 9 to 5 would. And like, yes, there is like, okay, working on the business, doing client work and that stuff, but like, what happens when if you're used to working only 2 to 3 hours a day after your 9 to 5 on your business, but now you have like a full like 5-day work week, essentially, that is just for your business, like you have so much time and all that stuff that you probably would have done over the course of like a week, maybe 2 weeks, you can get done now in like 1 to 2, maybe 3 days. And it's like very interesting because it's like really taking a look at how do you structure your schedule and what do you want to fill your time with. I think that's like, not everyone is leaving their 9 to 5 job and being able to jump right into traveling all the time or going out all the time. I know that I wasn't. Reese and I were probably the brokest that we've ever been, like the most broke. Like it was bad. And we had accumulated so much debt over the course of this like period as we were adjusting to me, going full time in my business. And I was so determined and I was so proud and prideful that I like didn't want to go back and get a 9 to 5. And I also just wanted to prove it to myself. And there's so much to unpack. But really, like, that dream life, like that ideal dream life doesn't actually happen right off the bat for a lot of people. Usually that comes down the line. Like you're able to go full time into your business and then you're like, okay, now it's time to actually like increase capacity for taking on clients and doing all these different things so then we can generate some more revenue, so then we can start paying ourselves more, so then we can actually live the life that we want. And as I've had these conversations with clients about time freedom and productivity and stuff like that, one, I've talked about give yourself grace. Like you have been doing life the same way for years, having a 9 to 5, having school, doing, like having something that was built into your schedule that filled your time, and now you have so much time. I have never been more aware of how long a day is until I like got out of my 9 to 5 and was full time in my business. I don't believe that everyone has the same exact 24 hours. Like, yes, in the grand scheme of like life, the day is 24 hours, but I don't think that we all have the same 24 hours and it really is circumstantial. But when you going full time in my business, I was like, 24 hours is such a long time. And I mean, sometimes I'm like, it goes by too quick nowadays, where I'm like, oh, I wish I had a few more hours in the day. But like, I think a big thing is one, giving yourself grace to just adjust and to play around with it. When I got out of my 9 to 5 was burnt out. I was so burnt out. I was clocking way more than 40 hours a week. There was so much going on at my 9 to 5 which pushed me to believe that I was going to quit. Like I got to a point where I was like, okay, I did love my job, but it didn't love me enough. I wasn't being taken care enough to be able to continue working for the organization that I was working for. And so really giving yourself grace and like not being like, in that first month, you have to accomplish X, Y, and Z, and like it has to be amazing and grand and big milestones. Give yourself grace and like give yourself time to actually rest. I think that was such a big thing, and even something that I'm playing around with now is rest. What is the ideal time for me to rest? How much rest do I need to get in my week, in my day? And not just like looking at sleeping, but like actual downtime where I'm not working, I'm not on socials, I'm not having to answer phone calls from family or stuff, but like how much downtime, recharge time do I actually need? So I think that's like a big thing is just giving yourself grace, and I think kind of allowing yourself to redefine what does success look like, because I feel like that's also something that shifts a lot when you move from working a 9 to 5 job and side hustling your business to being full time in your business. Is like what does success look like and how are you measuring that now? How has that changed? I think it's also time to pick up a hobby. What is something that you've been wanting to do that you've been putting off? I think that I'm saying I think so much. LOL. We we go on. But so often we tell ourselves, I need to hit this milestone and then I'll go do this. Oh, I need to jump over this bar or hurdle over this bar and then I'll be able to go do this. Like, I have to hit this milestone. I have to do this thing before I can do this thing that actually brings me joy or that I want to try or experiment with. And I think that, like, so often that is also what leads to even more burnout is you just continue grinding and pushing yourself on top of like playing around with rest. Like, you know, I would even say when you leave a 9 to 5 and you're going full time in your business, you need to give yourself more time than you think to rest and just like decompress. But it's also like you can't just be working all the time. And like, yes, it feels so good and there's so much satisfaction in getting so much done in your business. But if you're not going out and experiencing life, like, what's the fucking point? Like, you built this business, you're doing all of this for a reason. And it's good to start establishing those habits early. Establishing that's like another thing. It's like if I could go back in time and like restructure how I lived life when I first went full time in my business, I would give myself more structure. I would literally be like, okay, we are only doing social media from this time to this time. We are only like these are the times that we're checking our email. Outside of that, like I need to be doing something else. Having dedicated time for like screen time, that's like work screen time, and then for funsy screen time because I do just enjoy scrolling through TikTok every once in a while. But I think that's like a big thing is like really looking at hobbies and what things do you want to do and explore and what can get you outside of your apartment, your house, your space, because it's so easy to spend so much time at home when you work full time in your business if you are not actively taking time to go to a coffee shop and that stuff. It's so easy to just stay home. And then you like realize that it's been like 2 weeks since you've left your home. Like I've done that where I've been like, holy shit, it's been almost a whole month, and I don't think that I've really gone out outside of, like, family obligations or stuff, like going out for fun. So that's, like, another big thing that I would definitely recommend. And I think that, like, also really looking at movement and how much are you moving your body. I wish that I had stayed more committed to working out and fitness, not necessarily in the sense of, like, trying to lose weight or even trying to tone muscles and stuff, but really just like moving my body for the sake of mental clarity, stress relief and everything like that is also so beneficial. But I just don't think all of this, like everything that I've just said, I don't think it's talked about enough of like how one discouraging it can be that first like 30 to 90 days of being full time in your business, like how discouraging it can be because you're putting in all this time or you're trying to put in all this time, but you're not seeing all the results that you want or that you think should happen. Because so often when you are working, you're side hustling, you're working part-time in your business, you are seeing other entrepreneurs and you're like, wow, they're full-time in their business and they have so much time to do X, Y, and Z and they're accomplishing so much. They've probably been full-time in their business for a while. And when you're first going full-time in your business, like you're just starting, like you're trying to figure out what is your foundation? What is the baseline? What structure do you need? Again, like I said, there's like a redefining of success. But yeah, that's all I have for you today. Thanks for tuning in, and I will chat with you next week.